last day of school in a small town, an incident occurred that left the community shaken for years to come. The day began like any other final day before the summer break, filled with excitement and celebrations. Students were eager to begin their vacations, and teachers were preparing to say their goodbyes, hoping to leave on a high note. However, as the day progressed, an unexpected horror unfolded that would mark this day in infamy. The school, an old, sprawling building with a history dating back to the early 1900s, had always been the subject of various ghost stories and eerie tales, which were mainly dismissed as folklore to scare the younger students. But on this particular day, those tales seemed to come alive. It started subtly with strange noises echoing through the hallways, sounds that seemed too sinister to be the usual creaks and groans of an old building. Teachers and students alike initially thought little of it, attributing the noises to the high spirits of students celebrating their last day. However, as the day wore on, the noises grew louder and more distinct. What began as occasional bangs and whispers escalated into unsettling screams that seemed to come from the basement. Curiosity mixed with fear led a group of older students to investigate the basement, a part of the school that was rarely used except for storage. As they descended the creaky stairs, the air grew noticeably colder, and the feeling of unease among them deepened. The basement was dimly lit, with only a few shafts of light piercing through small windows. The group used their phones as torches to light their path through the clutter of old furniture and stacks of forgotten textbooks. The screams had stopped, replaced by a deafening silence that seemed to throb in their ears. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a door that was slightly ajar, leading to an old maintenance room that was supposed to have been sealed years ago after an accident that had claimed the life of a janitor. Driven by a mixture of fear and a need for answers, the students pushed the door open. Inside, they found not the source of the eerie screams, but a scene that sent chills down their spines. Old newspaper clippings covering the walls, detailing various tragedies of the school's past, alongside photographs of students whose faces were scratched out. In the center of the room, a circle of chairs was arranged, each with a name carved into the seat, names of students who had mysteriously disappeared over the decades. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, plunging the room into darkness. Panic set in as they scrambled toward the door, only to find it immovable. Just as suddenly as it had closed, the door swung open, revealing nothing but the dimly lit basement outside. No explanation for what had happened or what they had seen. The group ran out of the basement, their screams finally merging with the echoes of the ghostly noises they had heard earlier. They emerged into the chaos of the school corridors, where other students and teachers were now gathering, having heard the commotion. The school was evacuated, and the police were called. An investigation was launched, but nothing out of the ordinary could be found in the basement. No signs of the door to the old maintenance room could be seen. It was as if the room had never existed. The incident left the community in shock. No rational explanation could be found, and the school eventually closed down, the building left to decay. Stories of that last day circulated widely, blending over time with the old ghost stories until it became a legend, a horrifying reminder of the unexplained and unseen that might lurk in forgotten corners. In the small town of Willow's End, the old Benton High School stood as a dark relic of the past, its halls echoing with stories that blurred the lines between myth and reality. The school, built in the early 1900s, had been abandoned since the late 1980s, following a series of unsettling events that led the community to call for its closure. However, the true horror of Benton High School began on a stormy night in October 1986, which forever changed the town's perception of the old institution. It was the night before Halloween, and the students of Benton High were excited about the annual school dance. The gym was decorated with jack-o'-lanterns, cobwebs, and flickering lights, setting a spooky but festive atmosphere. As the storm outside intensified, the wind howled through the corridors, creating eerie sounds that seemed almost supernatural. Among the students was Sarah Jennings, a shy sophomore known for her love of ghost stories. She had heard the rumors about Benton High being haunted, stories of mysterious shadows and unexplained noises that were often dismissed as just old buildings settling. Yet Sarah was intrigued by these tales and had spent weeks gathering information about the school's history. That night, as the dance reached its peak, Sarah and her friends dared each other to explore the supposedly haunted third floor, the site of the old library that had been closed off due to safety concerns. Egged on by her curiosity and her friends' encouragement, Sarah led the way, flashlight in hand. As they ascended the creaking staircase, the laughter and music from the gym grew fainter. The third floor was shrouded in darkness, and the beam of the flashlight barely pierced the gloom. The air was cold and musty, filled with the scent of old books and decay. As they approached the library door, a sudden chill swept through the group, and the light flickered erratically. Pushing open the door, they entered the library, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and excitement. Inside, the remnants of the once grand library loomed in the shadows, shelves lined with dusty books, a grand cobwebbed chandelier hanging precariously overhead, and a large oak reading table at the center. It was at this table that the infamous ghost of Benton was said to appear, the spirit of a former librarian who had mysteriously disappeared in the 1950s. The group dared Sarah to sit at the table and call out to the ghost. Reluctantly, she sat down, her voice trembling as she called into the darkness. "If there's anyone here with us, give us a sign." The words had barely left her mouth when the room went ice cold. The chandelier began to sway slowly, and a low moan filled the air, escalating into a deafening shriek that sent the group scrambling for the door. As they fled, Sarah glanced back and saw a shadowy figure seated at the table, its face obscured by darkness. Heart pounding, she turned and ran, not stopping until she reached the safety of the brightly lit gym. The group never spoke of what happened, too shaken to rationalize the night's events. Years later, the tale of what Sarah and her friends experienced became another layer in the legend of Benton High School. After that night, reports of strange occurrences increased, and eventually, the school was shut down. No one ventured into Benton High anymore, but on stormy nights, some claimed they could see a light flickering in the old library window and hear the faint sound of pages turning, as if someone or something was still there, lingering among the shadows. In the small, windswept town of Graywood, nestled between dense forests and the rugged Atlantic coast, stood the old Whitmore School. A building that had weathered many decades, its exterior was marked by ivy that crawled over its stone walls, almost as if nature itself wanted to reclaim it for the secrets it held. It was a place rich with history, and not without its share of legends, especially one that pertained to Room 211. Room 211 was at the end of a long, narrow corridor on the second floor, secluded and somehow different from the rest of the school. Over the years, this particular room had been the source of numerous unexplained incidents and unsettling stories that circulated among the students. The tales ranged from mysterious whispers, flickering lights, to the chilling sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Despite the school's efforts to debunk these stories, Room 211 remained a source of fascination and fear. The story that defined Room 211 most profoundly occurred in the fall of 1998. A class of 6th graders had just been assigned to Room 201 due to overcrowding elsewhere in the school. Their teacher, Mrs. Eleanor Bates, a seasoned educator with a no-nonsense reputation, dismissed any ghost stories as products of overactive imaginations. However, as the autumn winds began to howl and the days grew shorter, strange occurrences in Room 211 became more frequent. Books would inexplicably fall from shelves, the chalkboard would erase itself, and cold drafts would sweep through the room even though the windows were tightly sealed. Mrs. Bates tried to maintain order, but even she couldn't ignore the growing unease. One particularly gloomy afternoon, during a thunderstorm that had plunged the classroom into a flickering dance of shadows, the children huddled together, whispering about the legend of Room 211. According to the tales, the room was haunted by the ghost of a former student, a boy named Timothy Mallory, who had mysteriously disappeared decades ago. It was said that Timothy had been a peculiar, solitary child, often bullied and left alone. One day, he simply vanished, and though the school was searched from top to bottom, no trace of him was ever found. As the storm raged outside, the lights in room 211 flickered more violently, casting everyone into periodic darkness. Amidst the chaos of the thunder and the children's frightened shouts, a loud slam echoed through the room. The classroom door had shut itself firmly. Panic set in as Mrs. Bates struggled to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the storm outside ceased, and a deafening silence fell over room 211. The children, wide-eyed and pale, stared towards the back of the room where the old wooden closet shook violently, as if something or someone was trying to break out. The shaking grew more intense until, with a loud crack, the door flung open, revealing nothing but old cleaning supplies and dust. The relief was palpable when the classroom door finally swung open, and the principal rushed in. Mrs. Bates, her composure shaken, quickly ushered the children out, refusing to let anyone linger. From that day on, room 211 was closed off, never to be used as a classroom again. The stories about Timothy's ghost grew into a legend that haunted Whitmore School, a chilling reminder of the past that lingered in its halls. Years later, those children, now adults, would recall that stormy afternoon with vivid clarity, some skeptical, others believers, but all agreeing that room 211 was best left alone, its secrets undisturbed. The story of Timothy, whether truth or fiction, had become a permanent part of the lore surrounding the old school, a chilling narrative of the horrors that can linger unseen, waiting for the right moment to be felt.